F'dan l-aħħar snin għamet aktar kuxjenza fuq in-neurodiversità u n-nies neurodiverġenti, b'aktar u aktar adulti jirċievu djanjosi tagħhom ta' neurodiverġenti. Dan qed iwassal sabiex il-post tax-xogħol u min iħaddem ikollu wkoll il-ħtieġa ta' aktar għarfien u kuxjenza fuq in-neurodiversità. Huwa d-dover u l-bżonn ta' kull organizzazzjoni li tagħmel l-aħjar użu mir-riżorsi umani kollha tagħha, inkluż dawk neurodiverġenti. Bi ftit attenzjoni u modifiki, min iħaddem jista' jiffaċilita l-kontribut tan-neurodiverġenti filwaqt li jkun qiegħed ukoll irawwem id-diversità u joħloq post tax-xogħol li jagħti prijorità kemm lis-sigurtà psikoloġika kif ukoll lis-sodisfazzjon tal-karriera. Din il-bidla twassal għal aktar produttività, kreattività u innovazzjoni, ma tintilifx l-esperjenza tal-impjegati kif ukoll għal qlieħ akbar.
Nselmilkom u nilqakom magħna l-edizzjoni oħra tal-programm tagħna MEA llum ħankunu qed nitkellmu fuq suġġett interessanti, neurodiversità, u ħankunu qed nifhmu l-impatt tiegħu anke fuq il-post tax-xogħol. Biex nifhmu aktar dwar dan is-suġġett għandi miegħi żewġ mistiedna, Joseph K. Muscat, konsulent, I welcome you here with us. Għandi wkoll is-Sur Joseph Farrugia, Direttur Ġenerali tal-MEA. Grazzi tal-ilqajtu anke l-istedina tagħna. Can you first explain more about this term?
Sure. Well, this term has actually been around for quite some time, but it's only quite recently where it's become more popularized in the mainstream of society. Now, the term was originally coined or properly defined by a woman named Jodie Singer, who's a sociologist from Australia, and she wrote her thesis paper in regards to what neurodiversity is, originally geared towards autism and the autism community. But since then, it's become a very umbrella term. So when we talk about neurodiversity, first off, we're all neurodiverse because we all think and perform differently. Now there's a segment of society who does not meet the majority of society, and those are individuals who are neurodivergent. So when we talk about neurodivergence, we're talking about individuals such as myself who are dyslexic, ADHD, autistic, dyscalculia, development language disorder, development coordination disorder, Tourette's. And those are traditionally been known as learning disabilities. But now political correctness, the terms become very popular. We're talking about neurodivergence. And that's what the term really means. It's about recognizing and understanding. And when we take a look at that definition, based on the learning disability definition, it was formed under the medical model, basically focusing on what's wrong with the individual. Why can't they act what is normal by the majority standards or the social norms? Versus when we take a look at it now in comparison to the social model, it's about recognizing, appreciating how we all think and perform differently, particularly in neurodivergence and how we think and perform differently, recognizing our strengths, not our challenges, and knowing how to support our challenges within society and most importantly within the workplace.
Mela, tajjeb ħafna, semmejna ħafna diversitajiet, bdejna billi għadna wkoll li kulħadd huwa differenti. U semmejna kemm importanti li nifhmu li dak li jkun jista' jkollu diversitajiet differenti fuq il-post tax-xogħol, anki kundizzjonijiet anki forsi semmejna dyslexia, ADHD, ħafna affarijiet kurrenti. Nista' nsaqsik kif qed inħarsu lejn il-biċċa tax-xogħol allura fuq il-post tax-xogħol illum il-ġurnata?
Jien naħseb kif qed inti wkoll, Dr. Muscat. Kulħadd huwa differenti, minn hemm irridu nibdew. Allura din l-idea li hemm minnu normali u hemm minnu differenti, naħseb irridu nneħħuha l-iktar fejn tidħol dal-kunċett ta' neurodiversità. Għaliex għandek spektrum sħiħ ta' abilitajiet u nuqqasijiet forsi differenti.
Li jikkumplementaw il-xulxin ukoll.
Issa fuq il-post tax-xogħol naħseb hemm waħda mill-ikbar sfidi forsi illi ma tkunx taf persuna x'abilitajiet għandha u forsi fejn għandha sfidi ukoll. Allura naħseb irridu nibdew illi jekk għandek persuna illi qed tiffaċċja ċertu sfidi, tajjeb illi l-employer ikollu idea għax hemmhekk jista' jkollok accommodation. Jista' jkollok persuni illi daw l-sfidi jkunu wkoll strengths ukoll. Per eżempju jkollhom livelli ta' konċentrazzjoni iktar qawwija minn ħaddieħor u li jista' jkun hemm opportunitajiet ukoll. U tajjeb illi l-ewwel nies minn banda l-ebda employer ma jista' jkun espert f'dawn l-oqsma differenti li jaqgħu kollha taħt neurodiversity għaliex kif qal tajjeb Dr. Muscat inti jista' jkollok spektrum sħiħ. Għandek dyslexia, jista' jkollok autism, jista' jkollok ADHD, vuol għandek ċirkostanzi differenti. U da mhux mart as-saċ imma huwa kondizzjoni. Vuol dire mhux mart li tista' titrattah jew tista' tfejqu, ma sempliċiment huwa is-setup ta' persuna illi taħseb jew topera b'ċertu mod. Allura l-employer għalkemm mhux ma jistax ikun espert f'kollox, imma jista' jkollu pariri u interventi ta' professjonisti illi mbagħad ikunu jistgħu jgħinu kemm lill-impjegat u kemm lil min ħaddem ukoll, allura hekk ikollok post tax-xogħol li jimxi aħjar.
We are making reference to the advantages of having such talent at the workplace. Can you tell us more about this?
Sure. And I do apologize. I'm not a doctor. I come from a lived experience. And that's my lived experience and what I do in bringing awareness and consultation towards businesses. So you pointed out quite a number of particular points from what I gathered from what you were saying. Yes, it's a spectrum, right? And as a spectrum, we need to understand that there are different levels, right? And because there are different levels, we have to recognize that there will be a certain individual will be strong in certain areas and also not be strong in certain areas. So again, because it's a spectrum. Yes. Now, when we talk about strengths, we have to understand those strengths, right? And one of the common things that we take a look at in the neurodivergent community society is the terminology, it's a superpower. Well, yes and no. One, we have to be careful because if we say it's a superpower, then there's the expectation that, an employee is going to come in and they're going to be, this big superhero individual in regards to analytical analysis.
Maybe it's a strength.
It's a strength. But also they have to take into account, from the other hand, how does that individual view themselves in regards to, do they see themselves as a superpower or do they not see themselves as a superpower? Which then comes the aspect of self-esteem, anxiety, confidence, which can have a huge impact. Because again, when we take a look at the medical model, we're always looking at what's wrong with the individual. And because we're always looking at what's wrong with the individual, we're not focusing on strengths and it gets overshadowed by what's wrong with that individual. Now, your question in regards to the advantages in towards businesses. Well, there are a lot of advantages. I mean, if we understand the strengths and we understand the spectrums and we know how to elevate those strengths, there's a huge number of advantages. We can take a look at pattern recognition, analytical analysis, being quite creative, being spatial awareness, narrative reasoning, which is an area where I'm good at, which helps me able to speak and to explain particular aspects. So being able to explain to a client or a customer or to a fellow colleague in regards to different ideas or concepts. There's also the aspect of being able to mechanical reasoning as well as intuitive and as mentioned, creativity again. So there's a lot of variety of strengths, but now comes the aspect, how do we harness those strengths? Well, first we have to create the right workplaces that will be able to recognize and support those individuals to elevate their strengths as well as support their particular challenge they may have which relates to executive function.
Għadna kif semmejna li allura min qed iħaddem irid ikun ippreparat għal dat tip ta' diversità, Sur Farrugia. Kemm taħseb li min qed iħaddem huwa konxju qed intuha biżżejjed importanza dil biċċa tax-xogħol?
Naħseb awareness hawn. Imma mill-banda l-oħra hemm il-biża'. Il-biża' illi jien x'tip ta' akkomodazzjoni rrid nagħmel. Hekk ikunx hemm bżonn xi forma ta' taħriġ anki għal coworkers. Ekk ikun xem xi affarijiet li anki min jaħdem mal-persuna jew madwar il-persuna jridu jkunu jafu irridu jkunu jafu bihom. Kif ħadd tidentifika l-estent ta' din il-kondizzjoni, għax anke meta qegħdin nitkellmu fuq dyslexia, m'għandikx grad wieħed ta' dyslexia, hemm min ikun ixaqleb li dyslexia, mbagħad hemm min ikun dyslexic sew. Allura biex tikkalibra da kollu, u mbagħad tgħid isma' mela jiena kif nista' naddatta l-post tax-xogħol biex nakkomoda lil persuna partikolari x'irrid nagħmel. Għax hawn qegħdin nitkellmu mhux fuq standard illi japplika għal kulħadd, imma qegħdin nipprovaw naraw ċirkostanzi partikolari ta' persuna biex imbagħad naraw kif nakkomodaw il-persuna. U kif ukoll dik il-persuna tħossha komda illi taħdem b'mod produttiv u kultant illi jkollha kwalitajiet illi ħadd ieħor ma jkollux daqshekk.
Ħankunu għat nitkellmu iktar fid-dettal dwarek, però l-ewwel xtaqt illi anki nieħdu il-kumment ta' Edana Mari Vella illi tkellmet ma' Edward u qaltilna l-kummenti tagħha jen nisimgħu.
Edana Marija Vella illi tispeċjalizza fil-qasam ta' riżorsa umana. Inti fil-perkors professjonali tiegħek tlabt għajnuna dwar kif persuni neurodiverġenti jistgħu jkunu inklużi iktar fil-qasam tax-xogħol u fis-soċjetà. Għaliex ħassejt dan il-bżonn u tista' tiddiskrivilna dan il-proċess?
Iva, jiena mħabba li għandi background u li naħdem ġo HR, minn dejjem kont nemmen li persuni neurodivergenti għandhom ikunu inklużi fix-xogħol imħabba li jagħtu dimensjoni differenti lit-tim li jkunu qegħdin jaħdmu fih imħabba li ħarsu lejn id-dinja minn perspettiva u lenti totalment differenti minn ħaddieħor. Ovvjament din iġġib sfidi fuq il-post tax-xogħol, speċjalment minn kollegi u anke mill-managers, għax ma jkunux jarfu id-differenzi li bil-mod ta' komunikazzjoni li jkunu jridu jgħaddu il-messaġġ lej dawn il-persuni. U mħabba fekk, ovvjament, il-messaġġ ikun uniformi li jinftiehem minn kulħadd u għalhekk ma jkunx inklusiv. Meta ngħid ma jkunx inklusiv, ġifieri aħna nkunu qegħdin nassumu li kulħadd qiegħed jifhem meta fil-verità il-messaġġ ma jkunx qiegħed jgħaddi għax għandna persuni neurodiverġenti. Tajjeb ukoll nsemmu li wieħed minn kull 5 persuni huwa neurodiverġenti u għalhekk fuq il-post tax-xogħol żgur ħansibu lil xi ħadd li huwa neurodiverġenti. U ovvjament irridu narfu li ħanintaqgħu kemm fuq il-post tax-xogħol kif ukoll fin-nies fis-soċjetà ma' dawn in-nies li probabbilment laqqas huma stess ma jkunu jafu li huma neurodiverġenti. U għalhekk huwa importanti ħafna li l-mod ta' kif ngħaddu l-messaġġ ikun jinftiehem minn kulħadd. Jiena nemmen li dawn, kif tiġa għedlek, jien nemmen li dawn in-nies għandhom potenzjal kbir u għandhom ħafna x'joffru fuq il-post tax-xogħol għax iġibu magħhom innovazzjoni u l-mod ta' kif jaraw l-affarijiet huwa kompletament differenti. Ġifieri jekk kumpanija tixtieq li tkun diversa minn l-oħrajn hija importanti ħafna li ikollha tim li hu imħallat.
Lura fl-istudio stana llum qed nitkellmu dwar in-neurodiversità. Mill-ewwel ħansaqsi lilek Sur Farrugia li aktar kmieni tkellimna anki fuq xi sfidi li forsi jaffaċċja anki min iħaddem. Allura di tfisser li qed tiżdied ir-responsabilità fuq spallejn min iħaddem?
Ir-responsabilità tkun akbar għaliex għandek persuni bi bżonnijiet speċifiċi. U għet irtiqot attent li jekk ma jarafhomx daw il-bżonnijiet tista' tkun taħsara għal persuna infisa. Per eżempju, tkun qed tistenna xi tip ta' output minn għandha li dil persuna ma tistax ittijilek. Biex neħu eżempju mhux li għandu x'qasam ma' neurodiverġenza infisa. Immaġina xi ħadd li hu career blind. U qed tistenna minn għandu li jara fil-kuluri, ma jistax, għax il-kuluri ma jarafhomx. Allura bl-istess mod, inti jista' jkollok nies li jkollhom ċertu limitazzjonijiet, però ma daw il-limitazzjonijiet imbagħad jista' jkollok ukoll kapaċitajiet oħrajn. U din ir-responsabilità tal-employer li kemm meta qed jimpjega u anki meta għandu persuna fuq il-post tax-xogħol, u nfakkaraw li anki edana Marja Vella semmit illi jista' jkollok nies li laqas jafu li huma neurodivergenti. Allura hemmhekk għandek sitwazzjoni fejn mina ħaddem forsi qed jinnota
Tibda jinnota xi ftit.
li hemm xi affarijiet illi jgħid mhux hemm problema, imma dik il-persuna b'xi mod hija differenti. Allora anke jekk il-persuna stess ma tafx, allora irid tkun hemm ċertu forma ta' komunikazzjoni u anki pariri professjonali. U mbagħad minn hemmhekk naħseb li tidentifika problema u li kemm min ħaddem u kemm min qed jiġi impjegat qegħdin jarfu li hemm ċertu sitwazzjoni, allura hemmhekk diġà għandek bażi tajba għal soluzzjoni. Għax issa jkollok jew aġġustament fuq id-dmirijiet, jew ikollok tibdil fix-xogħol forsi, jew jista' jkollok opportunità ta' xogħol li tgħid dil persuna veru tkun tajba biex tagħmel dan it-tip ta' tasks u tkun aħjar minn ħadd ieħor.
How can we overcome the traditional barriers of such talent at the workplace?
Well, let's go back a little bit because I want to take to what you said previously as well as to the question. I mean, one, we have to be careful that managers don't see themselves as doctors. They're not there to diagnose employees,
Indeed.
but they are there to be leaders and to coach and to manage and to recognize talent and also recognize the challenges and how to properly support those challenges. And going back to what Adana has said, you know, a huge aspect of the neurodivergent population, myself for a very long time, would never disclose in the workplace because it wasn't a safe workplace to disclose because managers and employers didn't have the understanding or awareness. And again, focusing on what's wrong with the employee and, you know, and as a result, basically, let's replace that employee rather than figuring out and identifying where are the challenges and also let's forget about the challenges, let's realize where the strengths are and how we can support those strengths. So that's a very important aspect. Now, the other aspect is, again, you know, a huge portion of the population won't disclose. And it's a very huge portion of the population. And what can we do to create safe workplaces where, one, they feel it's safe and comfortable to disclose, but at the same time, what can workplaces do to apply what is known as universal design principles, where there's resources and training provided and there's leadership where an individual doesn't have to disclose. And when we take a look at a lot of particular studies, when we have diverse workforces, it elevates the workplace. It elevates the outcomes that the workplace is trying to achieve. Which goes back to the question now. Now, is it the employer's responsibility? I think that's a completely wrong question. I think the question should be, do employers realize the benefits and recognize the barriers that's interfering with them achieving and receiving those benefits for their business? That is a more appropriate question. So let's take a look at the benefits. I mentioned the strengths. We also mentioned in regards to a lot of studies where we have diverse workforces, where there's leadership to elevate those diverse workforces and creating safe environments where that diverse workforces can achieve and be successful. Are those being achieved? And if not, what are the barriers that is interfering with that, with achieving those outcomes, which is interfering with the business's bottom line? That is a more appropriate question, and that's what the question needs to be answered.
Jekk jirnexxilna nħarsu allura l-ambjent li għandu jkun hemm fuq il-post tax-xogħol, nistgħu naraw jekk min qed iħaddem huwiex lest allura li x'għandu jagħmel persuna meta pereżempju jinduna li jista' jkun li għand diversità. X'passi għandu jieħu, x'jista' jagħmel?
Naħseb il-kelma prinċipali hija diversità. U naqbel perfettament ma' Sur Muscat illi fejn għandek post tax-xogħol li huwa divers ħatajn lil kulħadd. Għaliex il-post tax-xogħol wara kollox huwa mikrokozmu tas-soċjetà. U fejn ikollok diversità fl-abilitajiet u fl-ideat u anki li l-post tax-xogħol kun mera anki tas-soċjetà hemm barra, allura għandek xogħol li qed isir iktar tajjeb ħafna drabi. Huwa post tax-xogħol li jkun iktar innovattiv. U naħseb meta wieħed iżomm f'moħħu anki l-istatistika li semmiet minn Edana Vella illi wieħed minn kull ħamsa qed tgħidi, wieħed minn kull ħamsa qed nitkellmu fuq 20 intiet li wkoll 1 out of 4 that could be neurodiverse.
Ġifri kważi 25%.
Allora, qegħdin nitkellmu mhux fuq wieħed minn kull 1000.
Well, if I may, just quickly jump in. Statistically, if we take a look at a classroom of students, 4 out of 20 are neurodivergent. So that means 4 out of 20 employees, 4 out of 20 customers, 4 out of 20 business owners are neurodivergent.
True.
Da punt importanti għax allura mhux impjegati biss
Anke minn ħaddem.
il-customers,
Żgur,
il-klijenti.
il-klient, mela.
Allora inti tittifhem li jista' jkollok klijenti wkoll. Ma tistax tassumi illi l-klijenti huma omogeni, għandhom bżonnijiet differenti u anke entrepreneurs. Għaw ħafna entrepreneurs illi kienu jew għadhom neurodivergent, allora di mhix xi ħaġa illi rridu nżommuha warba jew ninjorawha u ngħidu li ma teżistix, imma żgur illi f'ħafna postijiet tax-xogħol l-employers, il-coworkers, il-kumpanija bħala soċjetà ħajltaqgħu magħha. Allura għandha tiġi aċċettata.
Concretely, what type of strategies can be implemented at the workplace?
Well, before we talk strategies, I just want to go back very quickly. We talk about accommodations. Accommodations are very important to provide scaffolding towards employees. And we also have to take a look at it from a legal aspect as well. By EU law as well as Maltese law, by not providing accommodations to someone who's neurodivergent is seen as discriminatory. And there's a lot of legal as well as financial aspects. So it's very important to be aware of that. The other aspect in regards to, let's take a look at the hidden costs. Overall, annually, when we take a look at absenteeism, which is about 24 million, and if we take a look at turnover, it's about, in Malta, yes, which is about 54 million. I think I got those two mixed up. And presenteeism, which is the largest, showing up to work while sick. 252 million is costing annually Maltese businesses. 20% out of each category are neurodivergent. So this is what happens when we're not providing proper scaffolding and support. And that's costing businesses by not removing those barriers. Now, in regards to your question, and what can companies do? Well, first off, let's bring up awareness. Let's start off training our managers, particularly our frontline managers, giving them the awareness and the skills that they need to boost themselves up, to be able to support neurodivergent talent. And that requires training and awareness for the owners themselves, particularly if they are a small business, because they may not have managers or an HR. So they need to have that skill set themselves to be able to support their employees to achieve their bottom line. The other aspect is, again, depending on the size of the company, we can have employee resource groups. Employee resource groups who are a group of individuals of neurodivergence where they bring up the cause and awareness and the training for their companies.
Grazzi ħafna tal-li kontu miegħi. Thank you so much for your time. Għadditilna wkoll il-ħin hawnhekk jaħrab bina meta nkunu qed niddiskutu. Jiena nilqakom biex tingħaqdu miegħi bħallum ġimgħa għal aktar minn MEA fuq TVM News Plus. Nsellmilkom.